Greetings, coaches. You're listening to the All Access Coaching Podcast powered by the Glazier Drive. My name is Rick Stewart, and I created All Access Coaching with the vision of coaches helping coaches, which is why I partner with folks at Glazier, because they share the same vision as I do, making you a better coach. This podcast, I'm excited to do part 2 with my good friend, Tom Walls from Canada. He had an amazing podcast where he talked about his program building and team building that he does in the preseason. And now this podcast webinar is a continuation of that talk where he's going to continue with his program building, team building ideals that he does in season and postseason. I met Tom at the Glazier, Minneapolis. And since Tom's dad played for Tubby Raymond, we hit it off right away, starting two club programs from scratch, ages 8 to 18, because in Canada, sports are not funded by the school system. So this podcast and webinar really applies to small school programs in the United States, club programs in both Europe and Canada, and of course, youth programs all across America. I do need to take a minute to introduce you to our sponsor for today's Part 2 episode. CoachComm is the nation's leading provider of CoachComm headsets, practice systems, and coach-to-player listening and devices. Teams of every size rely on CoachComm. From high school to college, champions across the U.S. choose CoachComm for their coaching communications. Visit them today at coachcomm.com. This podcast is being brought to you by allaccesscoaching.com, where a group of championship level coaches, Tom included, are all dedicated to helping you as a coach. It was very important to me when I built the website that we have tons of free content. The Coaches Corner has hundreds of blog articles. We do 3 webinars a week. We have all of our podcasts organized by subject on our website, so they're easy to find. You can download tons of free PDFs and PowerPoints straight to your computer. We have our locker room, a forum where you can get all your questions answered. Our online store has over 800 courses and 20 playbooks that you can purchase. But of course, if you're a member of the website, you get all that for free. We also have our camps and clinics pages, so you can see what Glazier clinic our team of coaches are speaking in, or you might want to attend one of our mini deep dive installs or system clinics put on by Kenny Simpson and myself. So without further ado, let's pick it up with Tom Walls, continuing with his program and team building talk. And he's going to really focus on in-season and post-season team building.
Rick, this is our candle ceremony.
And by the way, you're inside of this trailer that you can
Great. I forgot about it. So you get to see what the trailer actually looked like from the inside. 40 stalls. And so what I did was, we have an agreement with the kids that after our last game, we come in again for a Wednesday practice. Now, we were fortunate this year, and I'll give a quick shout out at the end. We went 8-0 and we won everything. So our last practice was after the championship game. And that's when we return equipment. And that's when we do this candle ceremony. And boy, does this work.
Yeah, so that's your trailer. So I'm thinking of a youth program, how they could take an old C train or anything donated and make a little locker room for their 8th grade team or 7th grade team. Europe, Canada, yes. Same thing. Yes. That doesn't have to be a semi-trailer. It could be I call them C trains, right? So coaches, if you just get something donated and drop it on wherever you practice, you might have one where you store your equipment and get another one donated. And if you obviously could put it on an 18-wheeler, what's great about Tom is his locker room goes with them to the away games. I think that's kind of cool. And
no, those tires are sunk down. They're going nowhere.
Nowhere. Leave it in place.
Yeah, we do. All right. So like we had said, this is the inside of our locker room, and it's the inside of a 53-foot semi-trailer. And the lumber was donated. The paint was donated. The flooring was donated. And I have a defensive coordinator. I'd love it if he would listen to this so we could hear his name shouted out, Marcel Pellin, French-Canadian, who came up with the blueprints for all of this. And parents got together and we did an Amish barn raising one weekend and created a 40-person locker room. But what you see in the picture, at least those of you who can see this and the podcast people can't, is my players. Sorry, guys, they're not my players. The players are lined up on both sides of the trailer. Some are holding candles and looking at them as they're lit. And one young man is standing and he's holding a candle. Now, this was an idea I got from Rick, and we started it at our first meeting that was at my house. We do this when my wife was handing out those T-shirts to the parents. We're over at a bonfire, and I'm handing candles to all of my senior players. And we do talk, and we talk about the why. And I do use Rick's phrase, although I might use it to come up with a different one next year, that the why has to make you cry. And I have the grade 12s take the candle, and they need to put their name on the bottom of it. They need to put their number on it, and they need to put down a word that represents them. Now, this is where I made it a little bit of my own, Rick, because I don't remember that in the original program. When we come back together at the end of the year, the last practice after our last game, each of those grade 12s lights the candle, explains their word, and presents it to an underclassman and explains why that underclassman is getting that candle with that word. The underclassman then is told to take the candle, put their name on it, their number on it, and put on a word that represents them. Now, I did take this line completely for Rick. I tell those underclassmen that they now have a big responsibility, that they have to live up to this word, and if they choose not to come back to football, that candle dies, and that word dies, and that legacy dies. It's a great way to end the season. I had so many parents complimenting me on this. And guys, it was simple. It was not hard at all. So that's actually how we end the season. And I wish I had done this in a little different order, because this is something we do during the season that's turned out to be great for team building and a tremendous amount of fun. Our pregame practices the day before the game, like everybody else, they're loose practices. We probably won't be wearing anything other than helmets and shoulder pads. And we always make sure that the last half hour of practice is open, where we have something that we call super happy fun time. And I kind of stole that name from a Seinfeld episode where Jerry appears on the super happy terrific hour. And each coach will take a football kind of game, and we'll have the offense and defense compete against each other. And the winning team gets to create a playlist that we will play the next Thursday during our pregame. Now, music during practices, I've done a complete 180 on this. I used to think it was a terrible idea. I'm completely on board now. It makes that Thursday practice so much fun. And this is how we end it. This is probably the best super happy fun time that we did this year. The boys in the white are on offense.
So it was almost the tie, so we're going to call this the tiebreaker.
And this is my receivers coach with the game.
All right. Butt. Toe. Butt. Head. Butt. Toe. Ball.
So for the podcast listeners, how would you explain what we just saw?
Oh, it's a game where two players face each other in a 2-point stance with a football in between them. The coach calls out commands like head, butt, knees, head, knees, butt. And the players have to touch those things with their two hands. But when the coach says ball, they have to race each other to grab the ball and throw it between their legs. It's a great way to end practice. So then we bring the kids together, we talk about the game, but the kids walk off with smiles on their faces. And then they create the playlist for the next week, which can be god awful, or it can be hilariously fun. I had a giant defensive lineman who made a playlist that was nothing but children's music. And we had to practice to the Teletubbies tune for most of practice. And he thought that was the greatest thing in the world. But so, Rick, as a side note, here's what's also really good about this. We assign those duties to the assistant coaches. And I'm trying to get better at this, but I kind of do the majority of the coaching on this team. We're all volunteers, and we run a really uniquely American offense. So even my Canadian offensive coaches, they're not comfortable with it. So when it comes time for running plays, I'm afraid I am the czar, and I'm doing everything. And I'm trying to become much better at giving things to the assistant coaches. Because remember when you were assistant coach, how much that sucked, standing around doing nothing? Well, this is one of the things that we do, and they love it. They love to do the games, and they research it. And we've had eating contests. We've had muck contests. We've had Olympics of football. It's been really neat, like the student leadership groups, that you never know what your assistant coaches will do until you give them the rope to actually do it.
Right.
So this is what we do at the end of every week, and it's become a great team builder. And I'm going to show you why this has been a great team builder.
So basically, this is, if your game's on Friday, this way you end every Thursday practice with something fun.
Yeah, for sure.
And if you play on Saturday, you would end maybe Friday. If you're a youth program, you're going Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, your game's on Saturday, you would end Thursday's practice. The last practice of the week, you end with something fun.
Yeah, and this was one of Coach Hugh Wyatt's phrases. And I didn't do this in the beginning, and it was a huge mistake, especially with youth coaches. They have to leave practice with a smile on their face.
Awesome. Yep.
So let me show you where this connects to one more during the season one, and then I'll show you the connection. And this is your idea also. This is our Adopt a Teacher program. So I picked this up from Rick this year. And what we do is we have every kid on the team pick a staff member to adopt. And what they will do is they will give that staff member the jersey that they won't be wearing this week. And they will ask that staff member to wear the jersey on game day. Now, not all the jerseys will fit. So we give them a nice letter, and the letter tells the teacher or the custodian that if the jersey isn't appropriate, please just hang it up in your room. And we had 37 kids on the team this year, and the faculty staff at SCI is about 50. So I had to talk to the principal about this, and I had to say, well, you're going to have some teachers or staff who aren't going to get these. And he said, yeah, that might cause a little bit of drama, but it's nothing that I can't handle. And this is a picture of our automotives teacher with the jersey on. But what's really funny, Rick, and I really like our principal, and he's been very good to me, he was one of the people that didn't get a jersey.
Oh.
So very quickly, I had to go to some kids and said, listen, this is the guy who lets us exist. Get him a jersey.
Yes.
So we found a jersey that wasn't being used, and we got it to him. But I bring this up because, again, I'm not in the school. And this is an easy, cheap way to create goodwill amongst your staff. Football is not hockey in Canada. And we need all the goodwill we can get on every teacher.
Awesome. Yeah, principal, secretary, you've got two problems, coaches. Sometimes you'll have not enough players. You'll have more staff members than players. So you really got to get creative. So some players will double up and two players might adopt the same person. If you're running short, maybe you skip, I hate to say this, but maybe you skip cafeteria workers. You cannot skip the janitor, the custodian in charge of cleaning your facility specifically. And you cannot skip the ladies up front running the offense, the office. And then the good problem is if you have more players than staff members, then we would extend it to the district office. And we started adopting the staff members at the district office, the superintendent and their secretaries and HR and payroll people and things like that.
Rick,
yeah, this adopted teacher program. I can't say I created it. I got it. My daughter and I were on a college recruiting trip. She was a D1 basketball player. And we saw this at a university where it was Adopt a Professor. And it was the football team at the time. Jim Harbaugh was the coach, University of San Diego. That was a non-scholarship college that Jim Harbaugh started his coaching career at. And his football team would adopt the professors. And I thought that was really cool.
Rick, like just about all of your stuff, cheap, easy, effective. And, you mentioned going to teacher professional development meetings. I would always go to those and wish that I could get something that I could do tomorrow. That's what I wanted out of them. And worst to first, there's a ton of stuff that you can do tomorrow.
Yeah, when I built this Worst to First program, which after a 2-year journey, we're finished and we're dropping it. I didn't want to just make another book on philosophy, right? The Kites have already done a great job. Randy Jackson's book. There's a lot of this stuff that's very philosophical, and it's great stuff. And they really talk about the philosophy of team building, the philosophy of character. My stuff is written in lesson plan format.
Yes.
You take that page out of the binder and you put it in the next day. And there's all the downloadable stuff where you can customize it, put your logo. I wanted to make it turnkey. I did not want to make it philosophical. So if you get the Worst to First program, you're not getting very much philosophy from me. And you know what? It's because I suck at philosophy. I'm not very philosophical. I don't have a bunch of cool sayings, and I'm not really good at speech making, but I know how to put ideals into motion. And that's what the Worst to First is. It's a 300-page, 3-ring binder. We've got now 18 courses. When Tom bought the program, and Tom's been very patiently waiting for me to finish it, when Tom bought it, it was only 8 or 9 courses. Well, when I kept filming, I kept going on and on and on. And now it's 18 courses. And then I really struggled I had to make it a Google Drive where I could let people download their stuff without my stuff being downloaded all over the internet, and, keeping the porn stars and the Middle Eastern hackers and keeping Russia out of my Google Drive. So I had to do some research stuff, but I'm really happy that it's dropped. You guys can find that allaccesscoaching.com, where you get this full Worst to First program. He's only touched on team building today. Each course, 18 courses, there's parents, there's alumni, there's youth, there's discipline, core values, hunting for a job. I'm leaving some out. Academic game plan, managing your 1 year, your 3-year plan, managing a coaching staff, your strength program. There's 18 components to building a championship program. And that's what we did. Tom, are you going to touch on the postseason?
Yeah. And I'm nearly done. What was the old line from Arlo Guthrie's song, Alice's Restaurant? At one point he says, I have been singing for a long time. And then he says, I'm not proud. And he pauses and said, I'm also not tired. So, Rick, I'm not proud, but I'm also not tired. But let's start to wrap this up. Okay, so postseason. There's 2 things I'd like to share with you. Exit interviews, which I got from Rick, and then something that I got a little bit from Hugh Wyatt, but I really kind of did this one on my own, called OKG of the Year. Exit interviews. Okay, so this is a screenshot of my Excel sheet of our exit interviews. And what I do is I talk with every kid on the team.
Hey, Tom, real quick. So coaches listen to the podcast. If you go to the show notes, we'll have a link where you can download these slides and see what coaches, he's going to explain it to you, but you'll be able to download these slides and see what his exit interview looks like.
Yeah, sorry, guys. I listen to a lot of coaching podcasts. I should be the last person to forget that you can't see this. So here's how the exit interviews work. Soon as the season finishes, I start interviewing everybody involved in the program. That includes players, assistant coaches, staff members, and administrators. And I try to keep the questions pretty brief and similar. I'm going to ask them, what are things that you want to keep in the program? I'm then going to ask them, what are things you want us to consider changing? And I define change with them. I say that could be include, that could be drop, that could be modify. And then with my seniors, I ask for them to nominate underclassmen who they think would make good leaders. Now, that idea I actually got from my son's coach in Philadelphia, that when he does his exit interviews with all the grade 12s, he has them create the starting lineup for next year for him to look at. I don't feel comfortable with that, but getting them to nominate people I should consider as captains, I'm good with that. For my assistant coaches and for my underclassmen, I ask them things to keep, things to change, and what they see their role as for next season. This gives me a chance to start to talk to the assistant coaches as to where they might like to coach if they're going to be coaching again. And this also gives me a chance to talk to some of the underclassmen about things like maybe you want to try being a captain. Maybe we need to move your position. Or do you see yourself getting more playing time next year? So there's a whole bunch of things that you can knock off in these conversations. And when I talk with the administration, I ask them, what role do you see yourself playing next year? So that gives me a chance to talk about the admin and how they see the program. None of these conversations ever last more than 10 minutes. And this year, none of them were difficult. But it's also a good place to have those difficult conversations. And through Zoom, I'm able to knock 2 or 3 of them out every night. But here's what I want to point out for those of you who can see the screenshot. The kids you can see on the Excel sheet that are listed, Saul, Randy, Mal, Ben, Ethan, Stephen, Maddox, the things to keep out of my first, how many is that? 7 grade 12s? You'll notice that shift is mentioned twice. That's super happy fun time. That's the game that we play. That's what the kids really remember. And that's what makes them want to play football. Now, if I could show you the rest of it, there's lots of cool stuff mentioned. But don't allow the team building. Gosh, no, let me rephrase it this way. Don't allow your program to be held hostage to X's and O's. Because this fun stuff really is worth its weight in gold. So the last thing I want to share with you, and although I think I've done a really good job in speaking the truth about Rick's program, and guys, I'm a football coach who has to pay for everything out of his own pocket. So nobody covered the cost of me buying Rick's program. I am a satisfied consumer. One of the best things we did was this. We changed our awards at the end of the year to where we only give out one. So we don't have an offensive player of the year. We don't have a defensive player of the year. We have one that's called the OKG of the year. Now, that's a phrase I got from Hugh Wyatt, and Hugh Wyatt got it from Bud Wilkinson at Oklahoma.
Wow.
And OKG stands for our kind of guy. Coaches, you can define that however you want. But I think that if we all sat in the same room at a clinic, we know what an OKG is. And for the first time ever this year, we had dual winners. And I was not in favor of having dual winners. I only wanted one. But the coaches all were very Canadian, and they wanted to share the wealth and have a little socialism. So it was one of those kind of things where I thought, it's really not a mountain that I want to die on. And I do like both kids. And so we only give one of these out. And you'll forgive me for backtracking just a little bit. I know that people who are on the podcast can't see this right now. Let me get rid of that audio. But I want to get to the video, the picture of the trailer. Great. If you notice all the way over to the right, behind the young man, you can quite see his number 77. You might be able to see the graphics under the H in home, OKG of the year. we put those kids' names up on the trailer.
Oh. So coaches, this trailer that's at his practice field that somebody's donated, he turned into a locker room. But coaches, this could be your C train that you just keep all your equipment in. They post who got OKG. Now, some of you may interpret that as the most valuable player, the player of the year, the Panther of the year. What the concept that Tom took from me, and I don't know who I took it from, I don't take credit for any of this, is that we preach team all year long, team before individual. Then at the awards bank, where we go and say, no, this person is most valuable. So in other words, this one individual is more important than anybody else on the team. And then you have the most valuable offense. So it's usually your quarterback or running back. So you're telling all the linemen that they weren't valuable, that they were meaningless. And that really bothered me. Coach has OKG. We always came up with things like Panther of the Year, Tasmanian Devil, highest GPA. Our Ironman award was the kid that had perfect weight room attendance. We came up with intentional words that did not use the word most valuable. Now I'm guilty. I'm in Pennsylvania right now, and the current head coach who brings me out there, he wasn't comfortable with this. So we changed it to offensive player of the year, defensive player of the year. I wouldn't necessarily choose that, but that's better than saying most valuable, right? You're just reconciling somebody who had a really outstanding offensive season. But, and coach is showing his media picture. And so he's got his whole team up there. If you're going to truly preach team over individual, then don't go around calling anybody the most valuable. That's just, hey, that's my 2-cent opinion. That's worth 1 penny. Practice what you preach.
And, Rick, the 2 points that I would make, I have seen a lot of teams do the Black Lion Award, which connects with an Army unit. And that really didn't fly up here in Canada, although I really liked all of those ideas. But OKG, we could all get behind that. So here's the thing, and you touched on it, so let me warn coaches with it just a little bit. And let's go to the big picture so you can see it. The very first year we instituted this one award, my wife and I were still running the youth club. And I was coaching the bantam age team, which is 13 and 14-year-olds. And we did have an older team, which was high school age. And it wasn't a good year. They were not led well. They were selfish kids. And the coach of that team had a secret banquet and gave out all of those individual awards that he had printed up. And I can remember it to this day because my wife and I, who ran the club, we were driving to my son's basketball game. Some parent, of course, put it on social media. There's a lesson there. My wife picked up the phone, called this assistant coach, and he was a young guy. He was in his early 20s, and said, "Did you do this?" And in a very embarrassed way, he said, "Yes, we gave out those individual awards." One of the many moments I've been very proud of her. She turned, "Thank you. Your services are no longer needed with this club. Good luck in the future."
Wow.
It took a few years, but it's worth it. And this has been great for team building. The boy on the left of the screen with all the hair, he was my strong guard. He was the tip of the spear. He was the guy we ran behind and kicked out and pulled and led our version of the buck sweep. The boy on the right, he was our strong side linebacker, and he couldn't have been more than 170 pounds and led the team in tackles. He is now considering scholarships paid for by NASA to study astrophysics.
Oh, wow.
And you know what, Rick? Different kids, great kids. And when you start stressing that stuff, the running back who ran for 1,000 yards and the quarterback who's throwing the ball all over the place, they get it. But you have to have the courage to stick with it over the humps in the road. You have to have the courage to fire that coach who went the other way.
Well, and let's go and unshare your screen, Tom. But yes, coaches, I've been doing this for years with the getting rid of the most valuable player type of deal. Unlike Tom, we do some individual awards, but like I said, we're awarding attendance and things that are important to our program. I've never once, not once, had a player question what we were doing. It's always been a parent. It's always been some adult who was upset because they wanted their child recognized as the most valuable. Maybe they've got in the child's ear and the player has brought it up to me. But when you're talking to a player, those of you that coach well know that when a teenager's talking to you, by their choice of words, you know right away if these are his words or these words that were put in his mouth at the dining room table. Obviously, if you're in a public school system, you might want to have, give your AD some notice, because when you first take over a program, the first 1 or 2 years you do this, somebody is going to post on social media. Somebody's going to fire off an email. How dare this coach not recognizing my son who ran for 1,000 yards? My players, because we've been preaching team all year long, my players understand it. It's going to come from outside of your inner circle. And I've never budged on it. I just explained to the principal and I explained to the AD why I do it. And that's what we do. So
Rick,
we've been on a while kind of wrapping up things.
Yeah, I'm in my last 5% on the laptop. Let me just show the last slide to wrap it up.
Yep.
30 seconds. Okay, so this is us this year after the championship game, which we played in at least a foot of snow. So guys, we've had the program at the high school for 3 years. Subtract a year that we lost to COVID. In those 3 years, we've lost one game, made it to the semifinals our first year, won the whole thing the second year. Year one, I had 33 players. I lost one during the season. Year three, because we can't count COVID, I've got 37 players. I lost nobody. I've got 26 coming back, and I've got 5 who are asking me right now in the off season, how do I join? It works. We did it with no money. We did it with no support. We did it under the understanding that we couldn't cause any trouble. It works.
Awesome. Hey, Tom, thank you. Coaches, if you want more stuff, we're going to have coaches' presentation in the show notes. Remember, there was a part 1 to this presentation. This was wrapping up the part 2. The part 1 of the hour-long webinar podcast was what he did in the preseason. And of course, this one you just listened to was very powerful stuff of what he does in the in-season and postseason. If you want more stuff, Tom's offense, which is wing tee based out of Jet, is up on allaccesscoaching.com if you guys are interested in that. Tom and I, this is the 3rd podcast we've done talking about program building. Him and his wife were nice enough to join me previously, and we've got that video up. And as usual with Tom, it was more than an hour. And him and his wife talked about how they started the program from scratch, how they went and formed the 501c, how they formed the organization, how they formed their bank account, how they raised money. His wife's a professional fundraiser. She had some really gold mine ideas about fundraising. So if you want to hear more about Tom and how he started his program, just go to allaccesscoaching.com, our YouTube channel, allaccesscoaching.com. All of these videos are all up there, which those are obviously for free. You can reach out to Tom. Tom, real quick, one more time. How do they get a hold of you? What's your email?
Email is oakbankfootball@gmail.com.
So oak like the tree, OAK, bank like I go to the bank and deposit money?
Yeah, and it's one word.
Oakbank at Gmail, Oakbank football.
At gmail.com. Yep.
Oakbank football at gmail.com. So again, Tom, thank you. It took us a while to get on this podcast. Tom's been waiting for about 2 weeks to get on here, and I kept having to cancel him and reschedule. He jokingly said that if I was a guy trying to date his daughter, the brothers would be like, okay, what's going on, dude? You keep canceling the date. So I thought that was pretty funny. Tom, again, thank you. Coaches, this is all at allaccesscoaching.com. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast, the All Access Coaching, powered by the Glazier Drive. This video, if you want to watch the video, if you're listening to the podcast, want to go back and listen to the video, it's on the All Access Coaching YouTube channel, as well as the Glazier YouTube channel. So again, Tom, thank you. Fellas, I'm Rick Stewart with allaccesscoaching.com. We're all about coaches helping coaches. And remember, as always, better today, but never as good as tomorrow.